This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Thursday, July 10th, 2014. Let me just grab something here. Hold on a second here. We're getting some feedback. There we go. Okay.
You got this. Yeah, this is like the third day in a row that my dad started the show and had the show player playing in the background. So you start the intro, you hear him say, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, then out of the computer, welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, there's about a 6-7 second delay, and it booms throughout the studio walls here. All right, let me start again. This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is July 10th, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host with my son Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I'm going to dispense with the normal intro here, and just say this, Joe. I'm glad that you're here. But a couple of things before we get into the actual meat of the show. I was thinking today. There's some people that need to hear what I'm going to say today at the outset. I believe.
I don't know what you're going to get into. We didn't talk much before the show.
No.
Been in the same room. But they haven't spoken much about what we're going to get into tonight. I've been talking about other things and on the phone separately with other people. So I'm interested and looking forward to what you have to say. So we'll let it go.
Well, here's boy, I do experience moments of clarity and being lucid at times. I know that's hard to believe. And one of those moments was today as I was going through some, I've been doing a lot of research on coming events and what is to come domestically and worldwide for the entire world, basically, and looking at the entire scope of things.
So you've been using the time travel machine that you made outside, okay?
I've actually cloned myself. Yeah. Getting into the details of the structure of this orchestrated, systematic takedown of this country. And it caused me to pull from our library, some books that are 30, 40, 50 years old, go back to the 1970s, the mid-60s, and some other works, more contemporary works. But I'm getting a clearer picture based on research and interviews with other people. In fact, I had spoken to a gentleman yesterday, interviewed him at length, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I interviewed this gentleman at length, and this gentleman had known Barack, I guess this could be anybody, so it's really not saying anything out of school. This person knew Barack Hussein Obama long before he became a national or even a state figure. And we had a pretty lengthy conversation, and that was just the beginning, but the information that he had given me yesterday really it really was unsettling to me, because it really drove home a few things that I had suspected, and I believe I do know, or at least have a better idea of the origins of Obama. And if in fact, I don't know what Arpaio has or Zulo has with any level of precision. Okay, let me just say that. I know the area in which they're going, but I don't know with precision the exact information that they're going to bring forward. But having said that, I do know what the gentleman told me. And that said, I do believe that the situation that we find ourselves in is much more dire than anyone could ever can comprehend. Now, having said that, my message to everyone is this. Just like if you've ever been in a car accident, it's depending on, if you could hit a brick wall, for example, and of course it's over pretty quick. But in this case, and I've used this example before, if you've ever been in a car accident where you've actually spun and skidded, and it took a while for you to come to a stop, and you'd hit things along the way, like we had here a number of years ago with Joe, and Joe and I were traveling out of New York City on the interstate, traveling north to Montreal, toward Montreal, and it was actually kind of a long accident. I mean, it wasn't something that was over quickly. We spun and we skidded. We hit signposts and trees and
and I want
grass.
Since we're bringing up this, I just want to say this: that accident, and contrary to what my dad apparently went through, that was a spiritual experience for me. And this was, I had fixed my life up to where I wasn't in trouble anymore, screwing around. I've been working with my father for a long time, a pretty long time. This is, I think, into the second year, or at least 2 years of back and forth to New York City. We were driving from the Hamptons up to Lake George, and the car just fishtailed on 87 north, just north of Albany, 3 lanes of traffic each way, and my dad says that it was it was chaotic, and what I experienced was quite different from that. It was I was sitting in the driver's seat, and after I realized we were in a free spin, gonna crash hard, I had this feeling of calm come over me, and a message had put in my head that everything was going to be okay. And after we came to a stop due to trees, the first thing out of my mouth, if I remember correctly, is "It's a miracle." And I remember the feeling during that accident. Neither one of us were injured, except my father, who had a concussion, except that was not my fault.
No, let me just say this. Joe was driving. I was in the passenger seat on my knees, reaching for something in the back at the time.
Yeah, and
without a seatbelt.
But when I tell him about this story, he always says, "What car were you in?" Wasn't the car I was in. But I really did have a spiritual experience, and I felt that, there's what do they call those? Guardian angels, or the Lord was just right there with you. It's not immediately what I was thinking as we were crashing, but I was thinking, how is it that I'm so calm as I'm watching us spin, and then I see headlights, and then I see the woods, and know how fast we're going. It's hard to explain the experience I did have, but afterwards, talking with people, it was a spiritual experience. We were spared by the Lord. That could have been the end of us. It probably should have been the end of us. The cop that came on scene said, "I didn't expect to see anybody alive back here."
Exactly, and so did the multitudes that were driving behind us. And I have to say, in a way, Joe, I think you're right, because how we missed the tractor trailers, and it was a fairly heavy traffic, and how we missed all of that.
And one people on the highway, when you see those signs, lodging, and they show the different places that have lodging there, those big signs are huge metal posts that hold those up, and our car was spinning into one of those. From what I remember, it looked like it should have cut the car in half the way we were going to hit it, but somehow we spun around that. I don't know how, and then went directly backwards about 250 yards into the woods and wedged between 2 trees, and a tree came through the back end of the car, totaling the car, not harming either one of us.
We could have been decapitated, basically.
Easily. 9 times out of 10, probably 99 out of 100 times doing that again, we would have been dead.
Yeah, the trees, think of 2 goalposts, or think of a goalpost with the 2 uprights, and the vehicle landed or traveled backwards at a pretty high rate of speed between 2 very, very large trees, either one of which would have, had we hit one of those trees, would have, who knows what would have happened. And there was a smaller tree in the back, but just as, smaller tree, but good size. The limb came through the window, as I recall it, and instead of taking off both of our heads or either one of our heads, it just kind of stopped short. And I don't think there was by the way, I don't think there was the insurance company said that there was not a piece of metal on the SUV we were driving that wasn't struck or dented, I should say, or affected in some way.
And I had not one scratch, bump, bruise on me, and my dad bumped his head on the window, which didn't even break either, the window.
No, just my head. I mean, but no, it didn't help the brain cells. But the reason I mention that is I really believe, and this has been weighing pretty heavy on my heart, I really believe that each and every one of us were born to live in this very time that we're living in. And I say that often, I know I do, but it's just reaffirming to me, things have been happening that make me believe that just as creation was certainly no accident, no tornado through a junkyard kind of deal, the fact that you're here and listening to this program and other programs like it is no accident either. That God has a purpose for each and every one of us. And that it has been impressed upon me over the last 24 to 48 hours. And I just want to say that because there are people who have sent me emails here over the last couple of days that are in somewhat, I don't know, they feel lost. And the only thing that I would recommend to them is listen, pray, pay attention. Don't let fear, don't be caught up in the paralysis of fear.
Absolutely not. We're warned about this, as this is a spiritual warfare tool that the devil uses to catch Christians off guard, to paralyze them, to infiltrate them into being taken out of the protection of the Lord. And in spiritual warfare books that Brother Marcus and other people have sent to me, this is one of the main points in these books, is that the Lord will protect you, but your protection is based on your dedication and you conforming to His will, not to conforming to the thoughts of our carnal mind and carrying those out. So we can be under the protection of the Lord. At the same time, we can also step out of that protection through being afraid of what's coming, not from the Lord, but fear of what's on this earth. As the Lord said it best, fear not those who can kill your body, but also fear those that can take your soul. And that was not for, he said it once, and it was a warning that many need to listen to, and many have failed to listen to throughout the years. We see droughts, famines, massacres, wars, these evil things happening all over the U.S., all over the world. And what is a Christian believer to think? Well, they're going to think what the writing on the wall says, is that bad times are coming, especially for Christians. But we can't let those thoughts of understanding what's coming, those thoughts of temporary inconvenience or terror that we know we will face in this world. As the Lord said, I came and they hated me and killed me. The same will be for you. The world will hate you for my name's sake. They will kill you. He assured us that not to be weary, not to be fearful, that He will be our rock, our foundation. And if we let our minds slip out of that, we're in danger. So we have to be diligent in remembering to never. And it's something that people work on, something I had to work on. You get a thought, or you're in a situation and fear overcomes you. Set your mind on the Lord. It's something that doesn't come natural, but it can if you work on it.
Right. And very well said, Joe. And the other thing, too, is I've received email from people who've said, I've tried to talk to friends and family, and they're just not listening. I do believe that as time progresses and events unfold, I think the very people that you've talked to, or at least some of them, are going to realize that what you've been trying to tell them is correct. And they will have their eyes opened by the events that do take place, events that perhaps will shake their paradigm. And don't give up. Don't give up at all. That's the other part of this message. Do not give up, because you really don't know what seeds you're planting in the minds of others.
That's right. The Lord said, never be weary in well-doing.
Right, right. So you could be talking with someone, mentioning something, and really you would have no idea. It might seem like you're wasting your breath, wasting your time, and not getting anywhere, but you don't know what effect you're having on others. You could be having a tremendous effect and not really understand it. And I think that's true with a lot of us. So this is a message of caution, not to be fearful, as well as a message of uplifting message, I hope, to have you understand that, look, you probably, ladies and gentlemen, are touching a lot of people without really knowing it, at least not seeing the fruits of that today. All we want to do, obedient messengers of the truth, period. Which brings me to something else.
And like a plant or a tree, when you plant it, it doesn't immediately grow forth and spring fruit. It takes time.
Very well said, yeah. Very, very well said. And the other thing I want to say, too, and then we can get on with the news, is I received a lot of emails, too, about last night's show and about the guest, and many people loved the information, loved the historical background, loved the Eric John Phelps, loved the way he laid everything out. Of course, it was kind of like a very, very quick, fast-paced informational show. And then I've got a lot of emails saying that, my gosh, how could you allow this man on your program? Well, as we closed last night, the show, and as I had mentioned last night, when we bring people on, there's a lot of times that we don't agree with their conclusions. We don't agree with everything that they say. I think it's important for people to understand. Look at this as if you were litigating a case in a courtroom. You might have a witness that has a piece of a puzzle. You might have 10 witnesses. Each of these witnesses has a piece of the puzzle that you're attempting to allow talk on the record in front of a jury. And the jury is really the entire world in this case. And the line of questioning has to do with their knowledge about a certain, very narrow area of an event, we'll say. Look at it that way. We don't agree necessarily with everything. I don't personally, and I told Eric John Phelps, I don't agree with a lot of what, or some of what his conclusions were. I mean, I think I made that clear on the air too, with respect to at least one of the issues we talked about. But I guess what I'm saying is, people have a tendency to think, for example, if we bring someone on that has researched and has documented certain things about the historical facts of the Catholic Church, or the Vatican, specifically the Vatican, or the Jesuit order, that we're indicting the entire Catholic faith. That's not true. Not true at all. And that's not our intent. If you read that into it, we certainly apologize. I certainly don't. It's not our intent at all. You have to take sometimes the good with the bad, or what you agree with what you don't agree with. If someone has the documentation, the evidence that has done the research about a certain subject, then you've got to take that and separate that from opinion, separate that from conclusions that you don't agree with. That doesn't negate the facts. It doesn't negate the documentation. You just have to be able to separate. I've talked to a lot of prosecutors, for example, who have said, I really don't want to put this witness on the stand because, for whatever reason, generally speaking, it would have to do with their with their previous background statements, whatever, other statements about other things, the impeachability in other areas. However, it's a critical component to the bigger picture. So that's the way we look at it here. Hopefully I've made that clear. And that it's not limited to last night's program. It's about other shows as well. You've got to take and isolate the information that you can document and understand and appreciate that. And from there, discard the rest. You have to discern. We can't, nor do we want to tell you how to think. Joe, I mean, is that not right? I mean, we're not asking people or telling people what to think.
No, what we're doing is we are bringing a set of guests on, as you said, who have specialty in researching different areas of life, religion, politics, and their conclusions are brought to the table on our show. And just because we have a guest on does not mean we agree with all, much, most, or any of what they say. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not any. It's not that I don't think we've had a guest on that we completely disagreed with 100%. But it's not to present evidence as though it's a trial. It is to present evidence to you to take in prayer to the Lord for discernment. It is to present evidence to you to take the information or the kernels of truth that are given or kernels of information and to proceed in your own research to find your own conclusion ultimately from the Lord. But in doing so, we have to understand that there are, just like there's 500 people in our interactive chat right now. I'm sure each one of them has, they all agree that the Lord Jesus is the King of Kings, the Lord come down in the flesh, died for our sins, sacrificed so we may all be saved. But I'm sure they disagree on a lot of other issues pertaining to prophecies and interpretations of different events and how things will happen or have happened.
Kind of like a family reunion.
Right. Nobody's going to agree with everybody, and you're told if you do, if the world loves you, if the world agrees with you, then you're not doing what's right. But back to what you're talking about, there is a huge level of deception out there, and the false teachers are countless. So it is hard to find trustworthy people. But we do our best. We would never knowingly put somebody on the air who is deceitful. And all we ask is that you take the information, not personally, but you take the information, and if it's something that intrigues you or something the Lord leads you to want to look into further, that you follow the Lord's will and ask Him for the truth. Ask Him to lead you and show you what is right and wrong with each issue, even things we talk about. Because, we talk about a lot of things and we throw around a lot of our own opinions.
Very much so. Some say yeah. All right. Before we get into before Joe and I get into the news, Kim, thank you very much, Kim, for sending this. And I had heard about this earlier today. Today there was Rick Wiles did an interview with retired Sergeant Major Dan Page. It was a marvelous interview. Rick Wiles, True News. What we'd like to do to set the stage for the rest of the program, hopefully with Rick's permission, and this is Rick Wiles from True News, and I'll contact him. I didn't have time before the show to contact him, but play a segment of that interview for quite a lengthy segment, 20 minutes roughly of his 25 minutes of his interview. This is so important. We could have called retired Sergeant Major Dan Page, have him come on, but I think Rick Wiles, True News at truenews.com, I think he did a fantastic job, just a tremendous job asking questions and covering what needed to be covered in this particular segment. So, Joe, with your permission, if we can do this at this point, just give me a nod. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, he's busy over there, both hands. So what we're going to do right now is between now and the break is play this very extremely important. And people, please listen to this carefully, because what this retired Sergeant Major Dan Page is going to tell you is critical. So, Troy, anytime you can just roll tape. Stand by.
Concern that the new army was going to be coming in the next 3 or 4 years.
So it was going to be gay-oriented, and its mission was going to be more like a domestic police force.
Well, not directly per se into that, but what they wanted to do, the way I understood him, it's going to be involved more with low-intensity conflict, and what that is it's not all-out war with tanks and guns and bullets. You're going to be doing more spying. You're going to be more interacting to find out who is resistant to federal policies and federal ways of doing business. That seemed to me what he was indicating that we were going to be doing. We would be what became now is, as you well know, NSA is listening to everything that you and I talk about right now. And I came to learn that's what he was talking about at that time, that the military was going to be very heavily involved in containing domestic terrorism, not overtly, but covertly.
Yet you were part of AFRICOM. I mean, it would seem to me that your mission was to go after terrorists in Africa.
Well, again, it goes back to what I've said to you. If you follow DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security's definition of a terrorist, and now this is their definition. This is not mine. It is a Caucasian male, 18 to 65, one who supports the Second Amendment, one who believes in the second coming of Jesus Christ, one that is against illegal immigration and is against homosexuality and has a definition of a traditional marriage. That is their definition of a terrorist. So that's why I keep saying to you, depends on your definition of terrorism.
It has appeared for the last several years that the Obaministas are purging the U.S. military of the patriots. Is that the case?
Yes, that's absolutely true. As a matter of fact, they just over the last few months, they have several flag officers. A flag officer is a 4-star general or above. You've had a General Greg, student servant of the Marine Corps, removed. You've had General Charles M. Aganganus of the Marine Corps booted out. You've had Lieutenant General David Holmes Hooton of the Army, Vice Admiral Tim Guyana of the Navy. You've had Major General Michael Gray of the Air Force. These men were removed of service because of their refusal to support military involvement in domestic affairs. That's the reason they were booted out.
Why haven't any of those men spoken out?
Well, generals are not like enlisted. There's a big difference between officers and enlisted. NCOs like me, especially Command Sergeant Major, we don't care whose feelings we hurt. We just throw it out there. Officers, they have a different code that they go by, and they got a much larger pension. My pension is not even a third of what their pension is. So you'd have to talk to them about that. That I can't speak for. Okay.
All right. Now, Mr. Page, a number of our guests in the past 2 or 3 years, and I'm talking both secular guests and religious, ecclesiastical guests from various fields of expertise, have indicated that they believe something significant is going to happen in September 2015. Do you have any inclination or any information that says something is in the works for next year, 2015?
I can tell you what I know. I can tell you what I have been set in on briefings where I was not the principal person doing the briefing. But I've heard talk from very, very high sources that there is a timeline. Starting in 2015, you're going to start to see, let me back up. There are people that you've been talking to that don't believe what you say, but starting in 2015, they are going to start believing what you say. You have to be very watchful of created, orchestrated events within the United States that would cause what we call the 97 percenters of the people to demand action against the 3 percenters who's going to get the blame. So there's going to be action taken, I suspect, within the continental United States and abroad that's going to create such havoc worldwide that people are going to demand some form of protection from the federal government. That's what I suspect is coming. And this thing on our border right now with the illegals, I think might be part of that.
Do you believe that this surge of illegal children, or I should say illegal immigrant children, coming across the border is a genuine humanitarian crisis, or is this a manufactured, orchestrated invasion?
In my opinion, this is an orchestrated event by the Obama administration to bring down the United States economically and socially and culturally. And the reason I tell you that is this. The Russians have signed an agreement with the Nicaraguans to build a new canal through there. There is no way in heaven's name that a 4, 5, 10-year-old can walk all the way from Honduras, because I've been to Honduras, all the way up through Mexico and then into the United States. Somebody has to be bringing them up here. Now, I would like to remind your listeners that there was such a thing as the bubonic plague started in Asia, and it went into Europe and killed over 45 million people, if I remember correctly. And then you had the Spanish flu of 1918, where numerous people were killed. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is there's also Iranians building secret military bases down there. Now, this is not my opinion. There are Iranians very heavily in South America, and they are, in fact, building military bases down there. And my point is, I don't think that the average American can tell an Egyptian from a Brazilian or an Iranian from a Mexican. It is extremely dangerous down there, and I really suspect, in my opinion, that there may be some type of clandestine operation be a plan to bring us down.
I agree. And just, today, there was reports about an Islamic prayer mat found in the Arizona desert. Well,
right.
Anybody with common sense knows that, the whole world knows today that the border is down and anybody can come across. And the U.S. government is literally facilitating it, helping, paying our agents to bring the people across, and exactly. Harassing and intimidating and threatening to arrest American citizens who try to stop it.
Well, it's not. It's only that they are literally taking Border Patrol agents off the border so they can make it more lawless down there. And again, I want to go back to the fact that Iran has had these troops down there that we know of for 5 years. They've been training with the Brazilian military. And that tour ended this past May. So if you take an Iranian down there, I don't think anybody's going to notice the difference from a Mexican from an Iranian. Now, if you talk to people within Homeland Security privately, they will tell you there's a real threat there. And if you remember, back in I think the late 80s, when the former Soviet Union collapsed, there has been alleged that there's up to 80 suitcase or backpack-type nuclear bombs missing. And yet our southern border remains totally unprotected. If we can protect everybody else in the world, and I did 4 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. If we can send billions of dollars in troops over there, our border, does it make sense?
15 years ago, I met privately for 2 days with former GRU military spy Stanislav Lunov, colonel in the GRU, and his chief assignment in the 80s and 90s was to find places in America to hide nuclear suitcase bombs. And I asked Colonel Lunov, how did you bring the suitcase nukes into the United States. And he said, we used illegal immigrants to walk them across the border.
Correct.
So if they were doing that 20 years ago, what do you think they're doing today?
Well, Homeland Security will tell you that they have what they call OTMs. That's other than Mexicans. This illegal children, by the way, this is the first wave that actually has been outed into the news media, that they've been having 10,000 per week since the first of the year hitting that border. In these briefings I've seen, I want to go back to 2015, there is a timeline that I have seen. In 2015, you're going to start to see economic woes, international crisis, and blah, 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 blah. The U.S., as I understand it, is to merge into a North American Union no later than 2017, 2020 at the latest. So our national sovereignty is under direct attack here because Mexicans can hold triple citizenship. They can hold a citizenship in Mexico and vote while they're American citizens and vote up here, and then they'll become state citizens. Are you saying
Are you saying they're going to revive this North American Union concept again?
Well, of course they are. Yes, they are. That's never going to go away. As a matter of fact, and again, this is a lot of times just senior commanders and soldiers talking. There's something called CAFTA and then AFTA. Have you heard of those two things?
No, I haven't.
AFTA stands for Central American Free Trade Agreement. AFTA means the Americas. So what you have now is Canada, America, and Mexico involved in NAFTA. With CAFTA, it's going to go all the way down to Panama, and then the final leg will be all the way down to Brazil. We will be under one social form of government and one economic system.
Now,
that's what's about to happen.
George W. Bush tried to do that, and it got stopped. But you're saying it's still underway. They're still negotiating. They're still putting this thing together.
Well, of course they are. Yes, they are. No, it's not going away. It's talked about at very high levels. You know, the American news media has done a marvelous job of demonizing Caucasian Christians. They have literally demonize them to the point that if you talk like this, you're accused of being a sexist, a racist, or something like that, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. They don't want the truth to be heard out here, and we're coming to a point in America where people are going to have to make some decisions, and you mentioned this in your opening statement. They're either going to have to get into the game and quit playing child's game with sports and things like that, and they're going to start having to hold the American politicians' feet to the fire, or else we're going to lose our country by 2017.
All right. Now, I woke up this morning, and the first thing on my mind as I was getting dressed was Dr. Daniel Daves, who lives in Costa Rica. He's originally from Texas. He moved to Costa Rica, but here's the reason he moved to Costa Rica was several years ago. He had a prophetic dream in which he and his son were standing in downtown Dallas, Texas, near Dealey Plaza, and there was a vast crowd of people in the streets. They were looking up at the skyscrapers. Suddenly, the skyscrapers had video screens, and a government official appeared on all of the skyscrapers, and this man made an announcement. He said, number one, the United States of America has ceased to exist. Number two, all property lines have been erased. Number three, the dollar is dead. Now, that dream shook him up so much, he got his family out of the country. Now, I woke up this morning, sir, with that on my mind, and I've not talked to Daniel Daves for probably since last year. And then, in preparing for this interview, I was watching a video of you speaking, and you almost said the exact same things about what's going to happen starting in 2015.
Well, let me go back to that, and then I'm going to talk to you about a road the Chinese have built. But I want to go back to what you just said about the sky. Psychological Operations has new equipment that has just come out in the last couple of years. and they are capable of projecting an image into the sky that will entirely fill the sky with any image that they so want. Secondly, we have new computer chips into psychological warfare sound systems. It cannot control your thinking, but they can disrupt your brain activities, and you can become very nausea and things of that sort. So we are one step away from we can throw the image into the sky now to appear whatever we want. If you're a Buddhist, you can see Buddha. If you're a Catholic, you can see Mary if you so desire. If you are an evangelical, you can see Jesus. So those things are possible right now. What is not known is that with the new sound equipment that psychological warfare units had, which I commanded, they're able to start scrambling your brain, and they're one step away from being able to send you a thought. Now, that's just very, very close. Now I want to go back to a road that's been built from China, from the southern part of China. I think this is maybe what you're talking about. It is a highway that's been built by the U.S. If I don't have the emphatic amount of money that it cost the American taxpayer, but I believe it's $4 billion to build that because of what we owe China. It starts at the southern end of China, goes down through Pakistan and India, and comes back up to Kazakhstan, into Turkey, and it ends at the mouth of the Euphrates River. Now, they do use a lot of existing highways. It's called the Old Crackamora Highway. So if you Google that, it will pop up, the Old Crackamora Highway or the Old Silk Highway that used to run back in biblical times. Now, that highway has been rebuilt with U.S. money. That highway has 2 foot of concrete with 3 foot of asphalt on top of it. It is for military and commercial use only. Now, if you stop and think about this, why would you need such a very, very heavy road like that? That has to accommodate some fairly heavy equipment. But that road, if you study eschatology, you know what it's going to be. In my opinion, that's where the king of the east is going to come from, into the middle of east.
It's an interesting concept. Getting back to the U.S. Is the world going to be divided up into 10 regions?
Yes, it is. There are 2 models on this. I don't have it right here in front of me, and I'm going to go from memory, but the world has been broken down right now into 10 regions. And there's 2 models. I'll give you the first one. The region 1 is the United States. Region 2, I'm going to go from memory now, is Japan, and it goes down through Australia. You got the European Union, the Asia, and some other countries. That's model number 1. The second model that they're toying with is to create 10 unions based upon the European Union. So with us in America, it would be the North American Union. That's region number 1. Then you have the European Union. Then you have the New Zealand-Australia Union, the Japan-Korea Union, the Asian unit, and so forth. So that's the 2 models that they're toying with right now. But they have to crash the economies in each of those countries and globally to bring this about.
Who's going to make the final decision about which model is implemented?
That I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. This is just my thought on this and some other people that I know in different positions. The U.S. wants to use the UN to make the world in our image, and the UN wants to use us to make the world in their image. My feeling is this. There are 5 or 6 countries mentioned in the Bible that never lose their sovereignty. You don't hear about anybody else. So I think that we're going to lose. That's just my thought. I think the U.S. is going to lose in this. I think that the European Union is going to dominate this.
When you were in the military, did you ever see or hear talk of such a plan?
Oh yes. It's openly talked about. Well, let me say, it's privately talked about. It's not talked about in front of junior enlisted. It's talked about with commanders and their senior NCOs or flag officers. This is well known. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not something out of the blue to them. Mm-hmm. But they're not going to talk about it because they've got career story about. And even now, I'm retired. I can be called back active duty whenever I want, held accountable for this. But you have to you have to speak the truth because you are going to face your Savior one day, and I'd much rather please Him than man. So that's what I'm looking at right now.
That's right. When do you believe that they're going to attempt to begin implementing this regional plan?
Well, for me and people in my position and my background, I can see it already. It started a long time ago. It started when we entered Bosnia. I was the long story short of that. I was in Tuzla, up at M&D North in Bosnia, and we had a general. I'm not going to name his name, but he said that he told us that this is the beginning of the New World Army at that time. Because we had what we call Salute Alley. And every coalition force member that was involved in that had their flag up, and we were required to salute every one of them. And we wore different unit patches from different armies. And he said this was the beginning, and this was in 95 and again in 99. This is the beginning of the New World Army, he said. Now, this was a U.S. commander of a division over there. So that's where this thing actually started.
Obviously, yeah, it's been underway for quite some time, but are we going to see it on the surface level? Is this going to become much more visible in the coming 1 to 2 years?
Well, here's what you're going to see. If the military starts, the only way you'll see the military get involved is if local law enforcement cannot control the populace. Then what will happen is the military will come in, but they will stay in the shadows. Typically what we do when we come into a country that has the type of government that we have or similar to that, they will disarm the policeman. They will leave a weapon in their holster, but they will take the firing pin out and the magazine remains empty. So they'll have the presence of the police, but they'll be the real authority behind it. The second thing will happen is all communications will be shut down. And the military will bring in a new broadcaster, such as your voice will not be heard. You will be silenced. I don't know if you've ever heard of this or not. Have you ever heard the term continuity of government?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Oliver North and Dick Cheney.
Right. Okay. Have you looked at an exchange between him and Congressman Jack Brooks where they talk about the term continuity of government?
Oh yeah, that was during the Iran-Contra controversy, wasn't
exactly.
it? Yes, sir. I saw it.
Okay. Well, subsequent to that, under the Bush administration, they took that a step further and developed what they call a plan called Main Core. That's two different words: MAINCORE. And in the event of civil disturbance against the federal government policy, they are going to inter indefinitely X number of millions of Americans, and that's why this 2012 National Defense Authorization Act that we got was so very important. And the Supreme Court just upheld, about 2 weeks ago, they upheld the president authorizing assassination of American citizens and indefinite detentions. So you can be arrested without ever being charged, and when they come in and get you, you're gone forever. So I think that's what's about to happen.
Well, I think that's what many of us who have been speaking out for years are concerned, that we're at this stage. Dinesh D'Souza, the filmmaker who produced 2016 and his new movie, America, Imagine a World Without Her. I think the most chilling scene in the movie is at the end when he's in handcuffs. And, Mr. Page, I don't know. There were a lot of people. When I went to see the movie on the 4th of July, there were a lot of people there, who applauded at the end of the movie. But I wanted to stand up in the theater and say, do you all understand that man is going to prison? Do you get it? He made a movie 2 years ago about Obama, and now, 2 years later, he's on his way to prison.
Right. The Army just built a new training center in Virginia. Perhaps you've heard of this.
Yes.
Now, we've always had training centers around the world, but we have never built a city to scale that resembled a U.S. city. We've always had them built to an African village or a Middle Eastern city or something like that. But the one in Virginia, and that came out, that was made public, I think, back in February or March. That's for a reason. Soldiers in the military, and remember, I used to be a drill instructor, a first sergeant and all that, they are being told that if you want to stay, now I have not confirmed this. I just got this yesterday. I have not confirmed this, that officers now who serve at the discretion of Congress, if they want to go beyond their initial 6 years, they've got to sign a waiver saying they're willing to shoot American citizens if the president so orders that. So this is the kind of thing that they're going into. They now used to have target training on the rifle range where they had just the shape of a human form. Now they're actually starting to put faces on those things, and they are not Arabs, they are not Muslims, but they are Americans. So that's a whole switch in training doctrine.
And that training city in Virginia, I think, is it at Quantico? That training city has a church. It looks like a Baptist church or a Methodist church.
Right. There is an air of extreme hatred toward Christians within the military. You cannot close prayers in the name of Jesus. You can make a generic prayer as long as no one finds it offensive. But you can't use the word Jesus. You can't. In many places, you can't even have a Bible sitting out now. Now that's persecution.
This surge of illegal immigrant children coming into America, the children are being taken by federal agents to U.S. military bases where the children are being detained and held at military bases. I suspect this is a psychological effort to prepare the American people for the roundup and detainment of their children in military bases.
Well, I would think that's true. See, one of the things that we do in psychological warfare, and this is kind of a pet peeve of mine. When I was born, they have to put down who your mother, father is, race, and sex, stuff like that. And they put down a Caucasian male on my birth certificate. Well, the other day I went down to get a new one, and they had white male. And I asked the lady, I said, well, why is this on here? I said, this is wrong. She says, oh, no, it's all the same. She says, it's all the same. I said, well, then if it's the same, why did they change it? Well, the point I'm trying to make to you is I did 2 years in Germany at the University of Heidelberg studying psychological warfare and how to get people to go along with a program and make it easy for soldiers to kill if they needed to kill them, such as in World War II. Well, the first thing they have to do is to take your humanity away. And the first thing they do is they redefine you as your race. So I was born a Caucasian male, but I have evolved into a white male. So that tells you how they're doing this. They're programming the American people for dependency. If they can get you dependent, then everything else will fall into place, because people, when they get hungry, will do anything they can to eat. So these kids coming up here are nothing more than a ploy. And bear in mind, if they're willing to misuse those poor children, think of what they're willing to do to me or you. If they're willing to kill them by letting them loose in the desert, what are they willing to do to us?
Mr. Page, I've got about 10 minutes remaining, and you're on record as saying that there are thousands of Russian Spetsnaz commandos inside the USA right now. Well, that statement has really, really escalated into something that it shouldn't. But let me tell you what's been going on here. The U.S. is and that was my fault to some degree. There is and there isn't. The U.S. is a very large training center for years. We have been training everybody since time began. And at any one given time, you will find thousands, literally thousands of different soldiers in America. They're all here at one time. Coalition forces, they're all over the place at any one given time. Coming into Fort Leonard Wood, if you go down there in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, there is a full-time, or there was prior to my retirement, let's say, there's a full-time Australian there, Russian, and a German officer that serves at the Engineer Center. That's not unusual to be all over the place. Now, when I was aware of them coming in like that, that was back then. I do know that there was a large contingency of them out at the Denver airport, large contingency, and they even set up games out there to see if they could storm the Denver airport.
So that's what I meant by that statement on there. So
well, I mean, we know for a fact that there was a group of Russian Spetsnaz at Fort Carson, Colorado. Was 2 years ago. Right. Which was
that's what I was.
Yeah, it was a shocking revelation. Why would we invite Russian commandos to train alongside American commandos? Why would we show them our training and our techniques and how we operate? What's the purpose of it?
Well, the very simple, it started in Bosnia. I want to go back to that when we started augmenting the same radios, the same style radios, the same training procedures. But the reason they're doing that is, you remember Boris Yeltsin when they had the alleged coup just before the Soviet Union collapsed? Do you remember what happened when Yeltsin stood on the tank out in front of the Kremlin? I remember him standing. What happened? Okay, the Russian soldier refused to shoot on their own people. So that's why they're bringing in. There are large amounts of Russian soldiers in this country. I'm not backing down on that. What I'm saying is that they come in and go. It's very fluid. Okay, you never know how many is here, but there are thousands of foreign soldiers in this country, including Russians, and they will shoot American citizens because they're not going to hesitate to do it. I've always suspected that if we have large-scale civil unrest in this country, or if there is an uprising where the American people try to dislodge a criminal regime from its death grip on the constitutional republic, that NATO troops would be invited in to help the military put down what they're calling insurgents. Of course. As a matter of fact, you had let me touch on something real quick here, because time is short. About 2 months ago or less, a Mexican helicopter invaded American space and shot on American Border Patrol agents. We know that there has been Russian soldiers on our northern border in Canada at a full time, and the Canadian police have even made excursions into our borders, and they're gone undone. We have NATO aircraft flying over America during the immediate time after 9/11 occurred. So that's not unusual. That's right. You're right, and I agree with you. In my opinion, sometime between now and 2017, there's going to be a bloodbath in this country. I believe it has started. In my opinion, I can see it, but the rest of the country is going to see it soon. Do you believe that it's...
Our tremendous thanks to Rick Wiles for his implicit consent for allowing us to use that, folks.
And for Troy for setting it up that we could play it, because we couldn't do that without him.
Troy, I want to thank you so much publicly. That's the Christians United Broadcasting Network, working extremely hard. But I just want to say again, thank you, Mr. Rick Wiles. His program is True News, his website, truenews.com. To listen to the entire interview, that was just a segment. To listen to the entire interview, it's from today, retired U.S. Army Command Sergeant Major Dan Page, and that's the interview with Rick Wiles, truenews.com. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Rick Wiles from truenews.com. But folks, I hope you listened to all of that, heard all of that, because we're going to be talking, that's going to set the stage for the next 2 hours.
With that, we're going to go to the top of the hour break of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. First hour, we had some banter back and forth, followed by a clip from Rick Wiles' interview today, which was startling, to say the least. If what comes to pass, if what was said comes to pass, and how it was said, it's very something to keep your eye on. And I know everybody is keeping their eye on this stuff, but you can never hear a professional or a researcher's side. It's never too bad to hear too much from different sources, as each person brings different nuggets of information that the other one might leave out. I want to get into first story of the day today is what's going on over in Israel. We have rockets being, a few days ago this started, you had rockets being thrown into Jerusalem, into Tel Aviv. You had the Iron Dome catch a few, and you had, I guess you'd say, retaliatory attacks by the Israeli forces in striking Gaza. I'm going to play a quick clip, an audio clip, on the Israeli hits alleged Hamas militants in Gaza strike. There's a lot more to this story than meets the eye from initial perspective, but let's listen to this clip and then we'll get into a few of the headlines.
Aerial footage of strikes on so-called terror sites released by the Israel Defense Force on Tuesday. The IDF claims that the material shows hits on houses belonging to Hamas operatives, although the names highlighted on screen haven't been verified. 3 militant compounds, 18 concealed rocket launchers, and other militant infrastructure sites were also targeted. The strikes are part of Operation Protective Edge, a new campaign launched in response to rocket launches from Gaza. Well, in the meantime, on the receiving end in Gaza, many homes have been flattened overnight. At least 50 sites have been hit by air and by sea. Israel says Palestinian militants have fired nearly 300 rockets and mortars in recent weeks, including a barrage of around 80 projectiles on Monday alone. Trouble has intensified amid tensions over the killing of 3 Israeli teenagers and the apparent revenge killing of a Palestinian boy. Israel is now mobilizing troops for a possible ground offensive.
All right, that was a clip from the Wall Street Journal's digital YouTube news feed, and it's very misleading because they used words like most of these Israeli strikes are killing civilians, and the alleged killing of an Israeli boy. Remember the 3 Israel boys that were kidnapped and found dead? Hamas took credit for that. Well, there was a retaliatory Israeli teenager that tried to kidnap a Palestinian child, I believe, or did kidnap and murder a Palestinian teen. Anyway, there's been obviously fighting that's increased and decreased. It goes back and forth. One thing you don't hear in these news articles is that Hamas is using their civilians in Gaza and Palestine areas, their civilians, the children, the women, as human shields. Hamas orders civilians to die in Israeli airstrikes. What they're doing, Hamas is firing guns and rockets into Israel from different civilian locations and ordering that the retaliatory airstrikes go into effect through the citizens, turning themselves into human shields, intentionally causing them to be killed and to make it look like Israel is just bombing civilians at random. That's not the case. Order comes down to ignore warnings from Israel, stay inside. This is an article from the Washington Free Beacon. Hamas ordering civilians to die. Israel also, before launching these airstrikes, they give warnings of that they're going to strike. Some noises, some pamphlets, some orders go out over the air. But half of Israel, I've heard, have been called down to their bomb shelters over this last week. Things are heating up over there. We have many listeners in Israel, and we want to thank them for their correspondence and letting us know what's going on. But the Hamas Interior Ministry has ordered residents of the Gaza Strip to remain in their houses if they are about to be bombed by the Israelis. You hear that? They're ordering the residents of the Gaza Strip to remain in their houses if they're about to be bombed by the Israelis, a move that effectively turns civilians into a human shield, and it is internationally meant to boost the casualty rate, according to a copy of the order published by Hamas. So here we have Hamas taking action against Israel, unprovoked action, firing rockets into Israel, then turning around and letting innocent women, men, and children die for martyrdom, as they would say, to boost casualty rates, to make it look like Israel's innocently killing civilians, as some would say, all willy-nilly, or just because they need to retaliate against someone. The latest Hamas order that citizens ignore Israel's warnings of airstrikes and to stay put is a clear effort by the terror group to increase the death count and apply pressure on Israel to cease its military campaign meant to end Hamas's attacks. Now, something we didn't get to play, and I don't know if I still have it up on the... Here it is. I do have it up on the soundboard. This is what the State Department, Monday, I believe, the lady who's a spokeswoman for the State Department said about Hamas and Palestine and the role that Hamas plays in the government.
I think it's important to reiterate here, we've been in touch on the ground very closely with both parties.
Well, but you've seen the comments that are coming out of Hamas, and now that the U.S. has, in effect, kind of accepted the fact that Hamas is now in this unity government, you would think that as leader of this unity government, it would be incumbent on President Abbas to rein in or take, try and maintain some kind of control over the activities of Hamas.
Well, right? You're right. I mean, you're right in the sense that we've stated from the beginning that we would judge the interim government by its actions, composition, and policies. And based on what we know now, this hasn't changed. We don't believe that Hamas plays a role in the government. However, to your point, it is difficult to see how other aspects of the reconciliation process can move forward in this current atmosphere, and we've conveyed that as well.
Well, I mean, I understand that that maybe it's a technicality that Hamas doesn't play a part in this government, but it is a unity government that includes Hamas. And I'm just wondering now, does President Abbas, more so than ever, bear responsibility for the actions of Hamas?
No, but we have, President Abbas himself has suggested that there would be serious consequences for whatever party carried out the crimes that we've been talking about over the last several weeks. And as I mentioned,
so what the State Department said is Hamas does not play a role in the Palestinian government. Our State Department. They won't recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. That's trying to broker a peace deal or a peace agreement that would split the land of Israel between Israel and Palestine.
We're seeing the Mideast stage being set for the apocalyptic wars that are about to take place, of course. Look at what's taking place with Israel. Look at our overall abandonment and our policy of disengagement with Israel. Of course, since Barack Obama has taken office, but even prior to that, no one within our governments, within our multiple administrations, have had the tenacity.
No.
To move the embassy to Jerusalem or to recognize Jerusalem as the actual capital or seat of power of Jerusalem or of Israel.
And as this story, goes on about the bombings into Israel and the retaliatory bombings from Israel, ISIS is being claimed now. ISIS seizes uranium from lab as experts downplay dirty bomb threat. Iraqi jihadists have grabbed 88 pounds of uranium compounds from a Mosul University science lab. But the United States and international weapons experts are downplaying the possibility that the deadly toxins could be used to make a so-called dirty bomb.
I think what we're seeing here, folks, is if you look at everything if you take it a couple of steps back and look at the entire globe, you see chaos everywhere. Middle East, Central, South America, or Central America, into the United States, of course, Russia with Ukraine, China, Japan. Where isn't there a conflict at present? And I think we have to look at everything in the bigger picture of things. And if you go back to just real quick, if you go back to the audio clip that we played, compliments of TrueNews.com, Rick Wiles, I think you can see how everything is coming together and it's being orchestrated.
Yeah, continuing in this article here, it says the material, talking back about the 88 pounds of low-grade uranium that ISIS now has its hands on. It says the material believed to be low-grade enriched uranium, or unenriched uranium, mixed with other elements, was taken from a science lab at the Mosul University by ISIS, the terrorist group that took over Iraq's second-largest city last month, and has vowed to attack Baghdad. Iraq notified the UN in a July 8th letter which sought internationals to help stave off the threat of their use by terrorists in Iraq or abroad, according to Reuters, which saw the letter. Although the material does not believe to be weaponized and ISIS does not have a known missile delivery capability, that The theft-soaked fear that a dirty bomb, a primitive explosive used to disseminate radioactive material, could be fashioned from the uranium compounds. You don't think they have the capacity? You don't think that the Obama administration, if not has left the capabilities there, did not, UPS overnight deliver, with a special bow on top, probably with a bundle of cash inside along with it, to make sure they have that capability?
I love it. Keep going.
I mean, you have a terrorist group which, at the start of this, tried to take over Iraq with 1,000 or less troops. You had 30,000 Iraqi military who ran away. I don't believe they did it out of fear. I believe they did it out of taking orders and probably receiving some kind of monetary or safety assurances, some of which probably weren't kept, as the people, some of the Iraqi military that were caught were, beheaded, shot, maimed, and their families as well. But you don't have a force of 30,000 running from a force of 1,000, especially when you have the weapons, the training, and what were we doing over there for the last 10 years? We were installing a new government, a new military, training their police force. These aren't, rookies, the 10-year-olds that signed up to fight. These are U.S.-trained forces, 30,000 plus, ran from 1,000 ISIS troops. These were the original reports that came out. Now, we have ISIS taking over the whole Middle East, moving from Syria to Iraq, from Iraq to Syria to Libya. I'm sure the same people that were involved in the September 11th Chris Stevens killing are some of the very same people in charge of ISIS, backed by our Pentagon and U.S. State Department, apparently, as they fail to remove themselves from it when asked direct questions. Now, we're being told that this threat is not only in the Middle East, that we need to watch our shorelines because America is in the crosshairs of ISIS. What, are they going to march across the ocean?
They don't have to. They're being escorted.
Magic carpets? I mean, what?
Well, no. I mean, they're being. Look, a lot of this. Again, I go back to the very important clip that Rick Wiles, the interview that Rick Wiles did. Iran, for example, has a presence in South America. If you think about this, and if you study this, research, talk to the people in the know, Iran had a presence, and this will be denied, by the way, and has been denied many times over in the media, but Iran had a presence, Joe, you're absolutely correct, at Benghazi. And with respect to ISIS, the porous southern border, while the Border Patrol are acting as babysitters for the minors, yes, there are minors, children coming across. Yes, that's a fact. But along with that are young kids, as well as ISIS and other than Mexicans, jihad, members of the Islamic Jihad and ISIS.
We didn't get a chance to discuss this too much, but I printed out for my dad the other day a released Department of Homeland Security map from January 1st to the end of May or middle of May, before any of this border influx started. And, yeah, thanks, Dad. He just handed the map back to me. The Homeland Intelligence Today briefing from May 27, 2014, it talks about unaccompanied alien children by location of origin for 2014, and they have been gathering this data from January 1st to May 14th, and that's what they use to put the data on the map to show where the children are coming from. Well, if they knew, how come we weren't warned? We weren't, hey, guys, there's 100,000 children. I mean, they're gathering this data from January 1st. A child can't walk from Honduras up through Mexico to the United States. Probably, it takes them a few months, even if they have donkeys, cars, whatever. But the children are coming from Guatemala, they're coming from Honduras, they're coming from parts of Nicaragua, but mostly Honduras. San Pedro Sula, Honduras, is where most of these children come from, and that's one city, and that is on the northern shore of Honduras, meaning they would have to travel west first to go to Mexico, or to go through Guatemala, then north to go up through Mexico. I mean, we're talking Central America here. These children, people aren't coming from, Tijuana.
It's interesting today to coincide with what you're saying that Senator John Barrasso claims that ISIS is indeed a threat to the United States homeland, and Newsmax reported this. My frustration level grows exponentially with the failure, with me anyway, to see the failure of other research agencies really explain where all of this is originating, how all of this fits together. They take one piece of information. For example, John Barrasso, a senator, just because he's a senator saying ISIS is a threat to U.S. homeland, well, why?
Dave Hodges did a great piece on what he thinks this influx of immigrant children are coming here for, and it has nothing to do with amnesty nor the children. He wrote a piece yesterday, and I forget who pointed this out to me, but I want to thank them, about how notice how the FEMA camps, the detention centers, are being used. Remember the episode of with Jesse Ventura that he did on these FEMA camps when he asked that senator from, I think it was either Georgia or Tennessee, about the children who were being housed at these facilities, where they said that they were free coming and going. They're allowed to come and go as freely as they choose. But when Ventura and his camera crew went to these facilities, I believe the one they went to was in Texas, they had rules, a list of rules in front of the gate. Basically saying these people are prisoners. You can't bring them things. They can't leave, etc., etc. Dave Hodges said and made the connection that this could be a practice run for relocating misplaced or displaced U.S. citizens from their homes to these detention facilities. Notice what is one common denominator in this story. Where are these children being sent? To detention facilities, or quote-unquote FEMA camps, all across the country. Why? Is it because this is the best place for them to be?
They're happy
Prison?
there.
Right, that's what the guy said, remember? Well, I'm sure if there are children there, they're very happy.
They have swings and sliding boards and barbed wire fence. Oh, I'm sorry.
And I think Dave Hodges is onto something here. The Border Patrol Agency and the people who are in the Border Patrol working on the front lines are being gagged by the media. You have members of Congress who are not being allowed access or given access to the places where the children are being housed. You have deplorable conditions for these children, I assume, if they are really staying in these detention facilities in the mass numbers that they say they are. And we're doing this all to help the children. At the same time, how are we helping them by treating them like people who are in Guantanamo Bay? I don't get it. They're better off at home. They're better off in Mexico. I mean, there are so many better ideas than do nothing approach, which the president down at the border today, as reported by the news, but yet not at the border. How are you at the border? Obama at the border, but you're not at the border. You're taking pictures and going to restaurants and having fundraisers.
Yeah, he's campaigning actually,
campaigning for what?
Well,
his world presidency?
No, it's for the good of the party and others. Of course, you've got certain primaries coming up, but the fact of the matter is, no, Joe, you're right, and I just want to stay out of your way as you were going off on this, because I think it's important for people to understand the true nature of ISIS. And
not to interrupt you, just
no, go ahead, keep going.
Firefox froze. I'm going to have to close Firefox down. I'll be on Skype still. I don't think it should knock us off, but if it does knock us off, we'll be right back.
Yeah.
I'm going to have
thanks
to
for letting me know that. Okay, well, go ahead. Go ahead. But Joe, you made a very good point there, and I see that all of this goes back to Benghazi in terms of. Okay, good. All of this goes back to Benghazi with respect to the exposure of the agenda. If nothing else, please, folks, keep Benghazi in the forefront of your mind, because that was all about weapons, arms running, and even more than that, that was about the training the training of these members of what is now primarily ISIS and others in Benghazi or in in Libya, specifically northern Libya. This is what we were doing. We were training these fighters with the intent for them to go into Syria to topple Assad. If we did not train, arm, fund ISIS, what is now known as ISIS, none of this would be taking place. This particular administration or this regime, this renegade in chief, and I apologize for calling it an administration.
No. I mean, just 2 days ago, Obama, $3.7 billion border request reflects deepening concern.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we've sent, if we're going to help these children, at least give them some money. Send them more than you did the Muslim Brotherhood.
I'm going to stay out of your way as you keep going. This is good because, folks, we've been sold such a bill of goods over the past quarter of a century. It's just incredible. So, look, what's taking place right now at the southern border, it cannot be. It must be aligned with what's taking place over in the Middle East. You've got to understand, folks, that this is all working. Each theater is working in concert with the other. The influx of other than Mexicans in particular, you've got Somalians, you've got a great number from Egypt. And
you saw the story about the MS-13 gang members graffitiing up the processing border center.
Yeah,
how did that happen?
I was going to say,
Border Patrol told to stand down and ignore that. We're told here, and these children. The more I hear about these children that are coming across, the worse I feel for them. They are being tortured. They're being raped. They're being used for heinous acts. They're being used as tools. All they want is something better.
As pawns.
They're being used as tools. They're being taken advantage of, and the worst might not yet be over. What's in store for these children? What kind of sick Illuminati rituals will they have planned for them? Is it because the CPS is being exposed at so many levels that they have to bring in children from other countries now? And sorry I think this way, but I mean, it's messed up. I go back to Sheila Zielinski's show we did with her on Saturday and Dave Hodges, and with Paul McGuire the next week and Deborah Tavares. She talked about, I mean, Dave Hodges talked at length about the CPS and how out of all issues, exposing this brought death threats to his front door.
It's that one issue alone, folks, will probing into the issue of child sex trafficking, and it's a tough subject to talk about. It's among sane, rational human beings. It's very difficult to talk about, but the child sex slavery and even the sacrifice. It's very difficult to talk about.
And people have pointed this out to me, at least in recent days, and it's something I haven't brought myself to be able to really sink my mind into until today. When listening to somebody bashing Glenn Beck when he said, we should bring them soccer balls and teddy bears, what he's saying is I don't think is that wrong. I mean, if they're going to be here, if they're going to be detained here, at least give them some comforts because of what is their future. The best case scenario for them would be to be taken back to their hometowns, possibly. In some cases,
yeah.
Another best case would be to be legalized here somehow. But I would bet that most of them are going to be used for much more nefarious purposes and have a much more.
Well, I disagree. Okay, wait a minute. I disagree with that, though. You said legalized here. I don't agree with that.
I'm saying it would be a better option for them to be legalized here than to await whatever future they have in the hands of, the people who are running them back and forth, or to be.
Well, the trafficker.
Right.
Right. I understand that, but that's really not an option.
I'm saying if there were out of everything, them being in America, taken care of somehow, but we can't take care of our own veterans. We can't take care of our own people who are sick and dying. We can't take care of the homeless. How can we take care of all the more of these people? And I'm not saying, send them away because of that. I'm saying we need to understand that the government is not going to take care of anybody. The only way they're going to take care of us is dig our graves and put us in there for them.
No, they're going to make us dig the graves with our own shovel. And really, seriously, reminiscent of the World War II footage, or even now, if you look at some of the footage coming out, or some of the videos that are being posted on the Arabic language websites, the terrorist websites, and forums, some of the videos are hideous, where you've got people digging their own graves and getting shot in the back of the head or getting beheaded. Yeah,
it's crazy. And this report from RT is kind of right on the money. Journalism group blasts the Obama administration for politically driven suppression of news. In a letter to the Obama administration, or to President Obama, 38 journalism groups criticized his administration for severely limiting access to federal agencies and a generally politically motivated suppression of information despite the president's pledge of historic transparency. Led by the Society of Professional Journalists, the group said that efforts by government officials to curb free flow of news and information to the public has reached a peak during the administration, following a similarly stifling cultural issue prior to President George Bush's tenure in the White House. Over the past 2 decades, public agencies have increasingly prohibited staff from communicating with journalists unless they go through public affairs offices, through political appointees. This from SPJ President David Collier. This trend has been especially pronounced in federal government. We consider these restrictions a form of censorship and an attempt to control what the public is allowed to see and hear. Of course they're controlling what you're allowed to see and hear. When they legally pass laws allowing propaganda to be split through the airwaves in the U.S., allowing fake news to be given to the people who sit there and suck it up as though it's fact from their couch, thinking that what they see on CNN is what's happening in the real world. And sadly, due to our human nature and the laziness and the lack of intellectual motivation, 99% of the population does sit there and suck it up and believe what they see on CNN or whatever the propaganda news agency of their choice to watch is. And that's why it's so frustrating to see infighting in the alternative media, because there are so few people really trying to get the truth out there, and then half of them are pitted against each other, which is by design and government infiltration, and it's working.
I just received an email. You were talking about government censorship or current censorship, right, as well as future intended censorship. And don't forget Sergeant Dan Page, as we heard on Rick Wiles' TrueNews.com at that interview. Very chilling statement saying to Rick, yeah, your voice will not be heard in America in the future. And I do suspect that ours won't be heard either. Just received an email from Cindy, thank you, where she writes this: tonight while listening to your program, referencing the Rick Wiles interview, she went to YouTube and tried to pull up the Sergeant Major Page video. All True News videos were snowed out with the "sorry, an error has occurred." Now we've seen this before.
No,
correct?
But you know what? I think I told you about this recently. There's been a change in YouTube searches. When you search for something and you put the filters in, there has been a change. Yep. I used to search for certain political broadcasters by name, Rachel Maddow, Bill O'Reilly, and I'd search this week to see what they were saying this week. They've changed it now, so when you do these searches, you're getting not the results you're looking for. And I don't know what the intended purpose is, because if you really continue to search, you'll find what you're looking for anyway. But they're doing it, and it's like they've done with Google. And our site on Google, you can't find it under the news feed, even though it's a news site.
Well, correct, and some of that has to do with the frequency of postings, which will I promise it will get better, because we don't aggregate news
from GoDaddy.
Yes.
For what?
We were kicked off. given 48 hours notice to vacate GoDaddy servers. What a nightmare that was back a year ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago now, I think it was.
In that interview that we played from Rick Wiles, when the gentleman said there will be broadcast, but your voice will not be heard over the airwaves, there'll be controlled broadcast. I fear that gentleman, if we get to that point, was telling the truth, because we are. There is going to be a point where it's either the internet's going to be cut off, or only the mega conglomerate media organizations that are owned by all the same ownership, owns ABC, NBC, MSNBC, Fox. They all, at the very top, it's all owned by the same people. There will only be, basically, I guess the best way to put it would be White House or government-authorized stories, government-authorized tales to be let out. And at that point, the internet would become completely censored.
From everything I've heard, folks, and from everything I've seen, this is taking place right now. What we're seeing right now, and I've been getting so many reports from other radio show hosts, talk radio show hosts, to columnists, to people who create YouTube videos to be hosted on YouTube and other video venues, that their material is, well, it's difficult for them to, some of them are taken down, some of them are blacked out, censored, blocked from search engines. And I know some can be attributed to just normal, everyday wear and tear, so to speak. But there is this, well, as we saw with the intended broadcast with our intelligence insider. Now, it's interesting. BTR has been very positively good and responsive with respect to that, and but frankly, they don't have an answer as to what exactly happened, and certainly even to this day, they don't have an answer to exactly what happened, what transpired, except to say that they believe it happened at the specific carrier site. Okay, the carrier level, meaning that it was out of their hands. So, but having said all of that, I do believe. I believe that we are in the initial aspects of being censored or being marginalized by making it appear that we're just a riffraff operation that doesn't have our act together.
Well, I don't know if you saw this other good news unrelated to what we've been talking about, but there's a typhoon headed toward Fukushima. And there's a polar vortex, a winter polar vortex coming in the middle of July.
Well, you talked to Stan Dale about that, correct?
Yes, I called him today, and he was unfamiliar with the story of the polar vortex, but he did mention that there is changes in the atmosphere and in the jet stream. And he did say those who will be affected by this polar vortex, who have gardens, to take the precautions to make sure you keep your gardens safe from the frost that will be coming or should be coming. Poor man's polar vortex to make a shocking summer return in eastern U.S. next week. Call it the ghost of the polar vortex sequel, or polar vortex revenge. Meteorological pundits may tell you that it's not a polar vortex at all. However, if you choose to refer to the looming weather pattern, unseasonably chilly air is headed for parts of northern and northeastern U.S. at the height of summer early next week. Bearing a haunting resemblance to January's brutal cold weather pattern, a deep pool of cool air from the Gulf of Alaska will plunge into the Great Lakes early next week and then ooze towards the east coast. Of course, this is July and not January, so temperature forecasts to be roughly 10 to as much as 30 degrees below average won't have quite the same effect, but make no mistakes, in parts of the Great Lakes, upper Midwest getting dealt the chilliest air, hoodies, jeans will be required. Highs in the region could get stuck in the 50s, and even colder than that. Parts of the in the mornings, as far as Wednesday, they say this is going to happen from the 15th through the 19th, so Wednesday would be the 16th. They say Wednesday morning lows could drop into the lower 40s.
And you might ask yourself, well, why are you even talking about weather? Why bother with weather Well, we do know that there's weather manipulation there.
Oh, this is also prophetic.
Very much
so. In the Bible,
so,
it talks about how summer will, there will be snow in summer, how there will be in winter. It would be the polar opposite of the season it's supposed to be. I'm not saying that's what this is, but very strange.
Well, and I think that what we're watching is the people who are spiritually in tune with things, I think, can decipher what's really going on. Once again, I think we have to look at everything in totality.
Say, I hope. I can't hardly decipher what's going on.
Well, I mean the larger spiritual warfare in the larger spiritual aspect of things.
And just on a side note, I'm looking at the National Weather Forecast, 10-day forecast for our area, and the coldest they say it's going to get is a low of 58 during the night on a Wednesday.
All right.
So
we'll see. Well, they can't predict.
Yeah, they can't predict if it's going to. The sun's going to come up tomorrow, let alone if they're going to have a polar vortex reach down this far. Let's just pray against it. And
yeah. Joe, I missed this email, or I missed this, misreading this email after we came back from the Rick Wiles interview with retired Sergeant Dan Page. This has to do with that interview, and I think it's important because this does shed some information on, firsthand information on a few things. This from Chuck, and we'll not give his last name. Chuck, I do remember, if my memory serves me correctly, I remember meeting you in Montana, as you indicated. Okay.
Yeah, I read his email.
Okay.
Very interesting stuff. Thanks,
yeah,
Chuck.
and very, very nice man. He did, through this email, wanted to share with us something that he had heard before attending the conference in Montana. And he wrote that it didn't really click with him until just recently. His barber is married to a man in the military reserves, and he writes that he can recall a number of times that he's been, her husband has been deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan. In the last couple of years, Chuck's been sharing with her the lateness of the hour, and of course, talking about his love of Jesus and the final days and what have you. But he writes that I finally asked what her husband does in the military, and she told me PSYOPs. And then he writes, it finally hit me a couple of weeks ago, but before I left from Montana, that she told him that he was just deployed to Guatemala. In other words, the military man was just deployed to Guatemala. At the time, he was questioning, like, Guatemala, what's that about? Well, she said, look, I don't know, and he doesn't tell me a whole lot, that from the military man, wife. In light of the latest border crisis, it seems pretty obvious now, and I think that one can certainly relate to that if you read between the lines. Folks, we're stirring up. Look, you often say, Joe, when we attended that conference in Western New York for the EMP conference. It was a very small conference that we attended, and there was a woman there whose son was working for the CIA, and she had said that her son would be deployed was deployed in the Middle East, or was working in the Middle East on various things that we would not see the result of for a couple of years, and just almost like clockwork, there it is. So I guess what I'm saying to you, ladies and gentlemen, is that what we're seeing here is an orchestrated series of events, whether it be the Middle East or the southern border. Again, you cannot differentiate between the two, and you should not differentiate between the two because they're intertwined. They're the same. they're the same players that are orchestrating these events. They're the globalist players, and a lot of times people really don't comprehend the fact that, above Obama, there are people above Obama, and there are people above Putin, and there are people that are calling the shots. And to think otherwise is pretty naive. They're playing all sides. They're funding all sides, as we have, as they have for a number of years. So the long and short of everything here, folks, is the lateness of the hour. If I can stress that, it's the lateness of the hour. We have to identify these events for what they are. The southern border is really the doubling down of the renegade in chief. If you noticed the other day, was it yesterday or the day before? I think it was yesterday when he gave his statement, Joe, at Dallas. He was.
I think that was yesterday.
He clearly, okay. Now those people who have not been following or only following the events there and his political aspirations of immigration reform. If you look at that, he's holding our country hostage, or holding the border security hostage, pending immigration reform that will that will legalize or provide amnesty for the bulk of these illegals. So what retired Sergeant Dan Page had said was absolutely consistent with what we see Obama doing, and of course what we see this renegade doing. And the other side of this is the lack of resistance coming from the Republican Party. Folks, if we really truly had an active Republican-Democrat paradigm, if we really had this two-system or two-party government system, if it was working the way it was intended, there would be pushback from the political right. There is none. The lawsuit by Bonnier is really a toothless action. It really is just a smoke and mirrors, dog and pony show. And did you notice how quickly talk of impeachment, calls of impeachment, were dismissed by Bonnier? And one other thing, too, I happened to catch a clip of Mika Brzezinski on Morning Joe. I don't know how many people saw this. Joe, did you see this? Where?
Nope.
Okay, all right. And it's floating around there. I don't know if it's Real Clear Politics or some other. You can search on the internet for the YouTube, or for the YouTube video of Mika Brzezinski when talking about the talks of impeachment of Obama. She actually appears. Well, the word that they used was verklempt. Okay, verklempt. She actually became, or at least presented herself as extremely emotional. She couldn't continue. She couldn't say the word. She was. I mean, it was a pretty good acting job, if that's what it was. That should speak volumes of what's really going on. I mean, it's indicative, to me, at least, that performance is indicative of a lot of things, and that's the Messiah worship of Obama. And the immediate, the backlash for any type of impeachment proceedings were met with the claims or assertions of racism and bigotry. So all of this combined, we're seeing what has been playing out now, and this is only going to accelerate unless or until we stop it. And how do we stop it? Well, that's the $64 million question, not $1,000, but $1 million question.
I know what their answer to stop it is.
Right.
And that is to get rid of those pesky Christians, those ones, or anybody who refuses to unite and hold hands and sing Kumbaya and join a new world order.
Right.
And that's going to be their what they do. Here's another piece of news. As we're getting up against the top of the hour, we want to hear from you today as well. Taking your calls, I guess we'll start in the next hour. Senate committee quietly passes CISA cybersecurity bill that could broaden NSA powers. New cybersecurity legislation cleared the Senate Intelligence Committee on Tuesday during a closed session. Critics fear it may broaden the NSA's already formidable access to Americans' data. Written by Senate Intelligence Chair Dianne Feinstein, gun-grabbing Wicked Witch of the West, CISA, or Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act, is widely seen as a redux of last year's CISPA bill, which was widely protested by online piracy watchdogs and ultimately defeated in Congress. A draft of the bill circulated in June granted permission by the government agencies to retain and share data for a cybersecurity purpose, which was defined as the purpose for protecting an information system or information that is stored on, processed by, or transiting, unless they meant transmitting, an information system from a cybersecurity threat or security vulnerability. Basically meaning to say they need the information for purposes of protecting their information gathering purposes.
You know, I happen to see something that I think it's pretty relevant here to what you're saying. Right now, every American is under surveillance by the NSA. Okay, that
I choose not to be.
Well, yeah.
I walk around with my invisibility cloak.
Invisibility cloak, or whatever. But I happen to see an interview on, and this is something I do not watch. I do not care for the Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! But she had an interview, or she conducted an interview with Julian Assange from WikiLeaks. She traveled to the where is he being held at? Hold up at, I think it's the Brazilian embassy in London, one of the embassies in London. So she traveled there to interview him, and he had stated that, look, it costs 20 cents per person per day right now to have everyone under surveillance by the NSA. So everyone is under surveillance by the NSA, according to WikiLeaks and their disclosures, and this is well documented.
And they were supposed to publish a list. I thought Snowden had a list of actual people. I don't know how many, if it was media personnel or anti-government associates or affiliates. They were going to publish a list of people who've been targeted specifically by name. And that never came out. And there has been other information that has come out. If you, there's a site, Cryptome, and it's been making some headlines here or there, but it always puts out, along with public intelligence, information, government PDFs on different issues. One of the main issues on Cryptome is the information collections. Well, there have been Department of Defense information collection manuals put out. There have been different documents from the NSA, cybersecurity, NSA. I'm not even going to read all these titles, but there are lists of, there are huge PDFs of spy tech releases, FBI info security tech, cell phone search warrant, NSA motherboard, and there's things you'd be surprised that I don't know how people get this stuff out here. One story me and my dad came across on here was an old Rothschild holiday photo release from like the 70s. And you remember how disgusting it was? They had baby dolls on the tables. They were dressed up as goats, and
yes.
But some people, I don't know if they're hackers, whoever, get this information out here.
Because we're short on time here, let me just say this. When I mentioned the 20 cents and Julian Assange, and I know where you're headed with that, and that's quite a lengthy discussion, but one thing Julian Assange did say is one way we can fight this NSA surveillance apparatus effectively, if it costs 20 cents per person for surveillance, let's not make it easy for them. Let's do things that would create or compel them to, if they really wanted to maintain that level of surveillance, then we can do things that will certainly not make it easy for them and cause them to spend more money per person. That would, in fact, deter, because, I mean, where are they going to get the money from? If suddenly, if you cost them 20 cents a day to, and he went through the budget and explained where that 20-cent figure came in. Now, that said, make them spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a day to conduct surveillance on you. Well, how do you do that? Well, that was the reason for the show with Steve Quayle and Rick Blaine. You know, you can, one simple way, for example, is to put your cell phone in this silent pocket type device, or in a pinch, roll it up in a foil, a lot of foil. It's certainly not going to work. It's not going to allow calls in or transmissions out, but nonetheless, you've got it there for emergencies should you need it. But
I carry mine around in a jar of water.
Yeah, well, I
have problems working it afterwards, but
yeah, it just sounds like you're in a submarine. But yeah, I was. My wife carries a cell phone with her, and I was just so tired of hearing it today. So tired of hearing it, this beep and buzzing and all the annoying sounds that it makes. Because, of course, she needs it right now for legitimate purposes because of family issues. But I just pretended. I walked away with it and walked it near a bathroom, and the next thing she heard was the toilet flushing. And it was, she laughed, but I handed it back to her. Of course, I didn't do that, but the fact is, you get to the point where that's what you want to do.
Yeah, we're going to take the top of the hour break.
Wait. A message from National Security Agency, subject number 70900. Folks, feel free, because July, in fact, I meant to bring this up yesterday. It was exactly 1 year ago yesterday that I published an article called A Message from National Security Agency, subject 70900. That's my number at the NSA. That's my case number, case file number. And if you recall, I had an incident happen where the phone call, when I was on the phone with a journalist, a very well-known person.
A covered, or what are they called? A covered journalist, or a real journalist, or a basement blogger?
Not a basement blogger. Somebody whose name, if I would state the name, would certainly people would know the name. But nonetheless, when I went to hang up the phone, it didn't. There was a ring back, and I thought it was how when you hang up the phone, you get ring back. I thought it was a ring back from the call, and I looked down and I saw the caller ID with the NSA Utah Data Collection Center caller ID on my office phone, and I couldn't believe what I saw. And of course, that went away quickly. But I did a year ago yesterday. I reported about that. So you can feel free to refer to me as NSA file number or NSA case number 70900. So
I have a hard enough time remembering Dad. So
I know, and sometimes you spell it backwards, which really just kind of.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
In 2014, that last clip was Zbigniew Brzezinski talking about how it was easier to control 1 million people not so long ago, but today it's easier to kill 1 million people. I tell you, Brzezinski, if you want to kill me, bring your fossilized bag of bones over here, and we'll see who's standing after a head-to-head. But we know that through your deceptive and evil controls, you wouldn't fight anybody or go after anybody one-on-one. You just like to come in from the back door and do what you can to smoke them out while they sleep. But that just shows you the depth of evil these people work at.
I wonder if Mika Brzezinski would be as verklempt over that statement as the word impeachment is associated with Obama.
He's not claiming he wants to kill 1 million people. He's only stating that it was easier then to control them as it is easier now to kill them. There was no ill will towards people given in that statement. It was just as a matter of factly said.
So that doesn't make him then a domestic terrorist, does it?
I say that because I've watched a number of videos of people defending both sides of that argument, like they do the Bill Gates speech where he puts up 4 numbers, carbon dioxide, population, and he says one of these numbers has to go to 0. And, it's basically a eugenic speech, but people defend it. Well, he never said he wanted to kill everybody. It's the same mindset. They'll never come out, and until the very end, they'll never come out and say, we are going to kill you. They're going to, just use their, and listen to the language he uses. And, you have a Brzezinski here, and like most globalists, very intellectual, very smart, vast vocabulary, sounds intelligent, sounds like a sweet old man, like somebody you'd want to have as your grandfather, only, as ruthless as can be. And people still flock to people like this. Between him and Kissinger, they're still hailed as the top foreign policy advisors in the history of America when they've done the most destruction out of any of them.
Very good, Joe. And I was during the break, I was just telling Joe, I thought he was right on point last hour, and I really appreciate and it was just fantastic dissertation last hour.
And thank you, and I'll say what I told you off air. I try not to be angry or mad on air, and I kind of got mad.
If
so
that's
what it takes.
Yeah, that's a good thing, and righteous anger has its place. Hearing from the people, I just want to really quickly reference Dan, who wrote me an email here, and I'm not going to give, of course, no last names here, but Dan writes this. Hey, Doug, you're right on. Or you were right on concerning your voice, the people's voice of dissent, being obliterated. Now, he's an adjunct professor, and he encourages everyone to read George Orwell's 1984. Well, while you still can. It's going to open your eyes to everything that's taking place right now. And he writes, I'm a Christian and consider the book to be nothing short of prophetic. Well, of course it is, as we, Professor, as stated by Paul McGuire in his book, A Prophecy of the Future of America. It's all in there. He writes, below are 2 quotes that you should share with your audience. God bless and good luck, or God bless and thanks. And I'll share these 2 quotes very quickly, and then, Joe, you can take it from there. These are 2 quotes from Orwell's 1984, book 1984. And by the way, that was not written in 1984. I'm sure everyone realizes that. And I think these are 2 salient points here.
Yeah. Remember we found in Tupper Lake, we used to go to old bookstores when we traveled. We found the original first edition copy of the book, and it was a couple $100, I think. Yeah. But it's a great read. That and Animal Farm.
Yeah, it's amazing, folks. Books are amazing resources. It's one thing to research on the internet. It's another thing to actually grab a hold of the older books that were written 50, 60 years ago, and what you find.
For less than $1, I bought an original Ernest Hemingway book yesterday.
Well, first printing. Let's clarify.
First edition, regular. And that was one of 3 books. There was another one from the 1950s. It was a story on a Nazi family.
Right.
And then there was a third book on American headlines from 1900 to 1950s, compiled in a book, Important American Headlines, for less than $1. It was at a thrift store that my wife frequents.
Yeah, you can find a lot of good things. But here are two quotes from the book, George Orwell's 1984, and I think they're very salient, very important for today. First quote, excuse me, in a way, the worldview of the party imposed itself most successfully on people incapable of understanding it. They could be made to accept the most flagrant violations of reality because they never fully grasped the enormity of what was demanded of them, and they were not sufficiently interested in public events to notice what was happening. By lack of understanding, they remained sane. They simply swallowed everything, and what they swallowed did them no harm because it left no residue behind, just as a grain of corn will pass undigested through the body of a bird. Now, second quote. Now I will tell you the answer to my question. It is this. The party seeks power entirely for its own sake. We are not interested in the good of others. We are interested solely in power, pure power. What pure power means, you will understand presently. We are different from the oligarchies in that we know what we're doing. All the others, even those who resembled ourselves, were cowards and hypocrites. The German Nazis and the Russian communists came very close to us in their methods, but they never had the courage to recognize their own motives. They pretended, perhaps even they believed, that they had seized power unwillingly and for a limited time, and that just around the corner there lay a paradise where human beings would be free and equal. Well, we're not like that. We know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it. Power is not a means, it is an end. One does not establish a dictatorship in order to safeguard a revolution. One makes a revolution in order to establish the dictatorship. Persecution is persecution. The object of torture is torture. The object of power is power. Now you begin to understand me. Very interesting. Very, very on point.
Let's go to the phone lines. We only have a few callers in queue, so if you guys want to jump in there, 661-244-9839. We're going to get to the phone calls now. We're going to start with area code 407. You're up first. You got the floor.
Hello?
407.
Yeah, hi. I'm calling. I've never ever talked to you guys, but I'm curious with the whole ISIS thing. Is there anyone that is attempting to form a Christian army to stand up to these folks? I've heard of, little Christian militias and whatnot up in the north, but is anyone from here organizing anything? And if they are, how do we get a hold of them?
Wow. I don't believe that. That's an interesting question, by the way, caller, because obviously if you visit these terrorist type of forums and sites, there's always this recruitment for jihadists to go to the areas of fighting and to join their army. But on the other side of this, the Christian element, no, I don't believe there is.
Well, it's time Christendom. And I'm not calling for, I know where the Pope, you had on the guy yesterday, or a few days ago, the Vatican assassins. I'm not saying all of Christendom is going to unite under one banner, because the implications of that are actually probably contrary, and who knows if that's actually one of the desired results. But all that aside, our brothers and sisters, as we know, are taking it, and perhaps, I don't know, I think the time is coming that we may need to raise up the sword again and follow the cross. And although nonviolent is definitely perhaps our way, Jesus did say turn the other cheek, but Jesus also had righteous anger, and Jesus did curse a fig tree. So I don't think violence is necessarily out of the realm of possibilities, especially on a defense of certain aspects.
Right, exactly.
And caller, I'd like to say there's something I recently, yesterday and today, I've been reading about is those verses, turn the other cheek and talking about self-defense. And this is my opinion, I believe when Jesus was speaking of turning the other cheek, I would like to believe it was not talking if somebody's coming to kill you, if somebody's coming to kill your wife, to turn the other cheek. I think it was more of a, if you're standing there and somebody comes up and gives you a smack, literally, or a punch, that, if it's non-life threatening. And this is my opinion. This is what I'm looking into. Self-defense of your family. We're told that any person who tries to save their own life will lose it. Surely anybody who loses their life for another will gain it. So we know that laying down your life to save others is a biblical thing to do.
But on the other hand, Romans 13, Chuck and Tim Baldwin have a wonderful book about that. The fact is that we have a duty and a responsibility to safeguard not only ourselves but our family and the people within our purview. So yes, having said that, caller, I think that the problem is much deeper than that, because you're fighting. ISIS is a creation of our Western intelligence, as well as being funded and armed by So we've got to look at the bigger picture here.
We do, and we don't want to get involved in their games. It's unfortunate that we are pawns, perhaps. And how do we upgrade and no longer become pawns, but we become rooks? And that's the key. And I think things, especially what you guys are doing, is definitely leveling up, if you will. Question: I'm over in Pittsburgh. Are you guys anywhere near there? Or
about 100 miles north.
120 miles north.
Erie, Pennsylvania.
Yep, that's our home base.
Oh, you guys are in Erie? Oh, okay. All right, I might have to swing up there sometime and meet up with you guys. I'm okay, no problem. I'll shoot you guys an email and look for my email. I'll talk to you guys some other time.
Your first name?
Thank you very much.
Your
Chris.
first name? Chris. All right, Chris. Thank you. Yeah,
yes,
we'll look for an email from you. All right. Very good caller.
Thank
you
so
much.
Chris.
Very good. Very. But it's okay.
We're going to go to 719. Stan's area code. 719. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, Doug. Hi, Joe. How are you doing?
Very well.
I'm calling in. Good.
Is this Mary?
Donna.
No, it's Donna.
Donna, I'm sorry.
You forgot me already, Joe? No.
No, their voices are all sounding the same. I apologize.
Oh, you've been doing this too long. I wanted to call and thank you for that guest, the Vatican assassin. I forgot his name. However, I do want to say I was doing research in that area, and he confirmed a lot of the stuff I'd been researching. And if people, I'm not saying, again, it's not about the Catholics. I think the Catholic people are good people. However, I do think that they, like any group, it becomes, the center group, the leadership, I guess is how you say it, leaves a lot to be desired. And they do write it in their own words. It's not like it's hidden. If you really want to look for what they write, you can find it. And it's them saying it. So he just confirmed a lot of the research I had been doing on that area. So I just wanted to thank you for that. He kind of tied a lot of loose ends up.
And that's why we brought him on, because we do know, and we've been doing research in the historical, the historical context of the power structure in which we find ourselves today. That plays an important role. It doesn't mean that we agree with everything that he has to say or stands for, but we asked him to come on for a specific purpose, that very narrow purpose, and he fulfilled that very nicely. So I'm glad you got out. I'm glad you got
a lot of. Like I said, it confirmed a lot of my research and tied up a few loose ends. But I was really glad to hear it. I mean, not glad to hear it, but you know what I mean, the research factor. However,
right.
I'll let you go and let people call in, and thank you again. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Apologize for forgetting what your voice sounded like. Call more often so we won't have that happen again.
I was just joking, Joe.
No, I apologize for you.
Oh, by the way, I did catch Rick Wiles' show today. It was really good.
It
creepy,
wasn't
but
that
good.
Well, it's everything we've been saying, and Rick, God bless him, he's a good friend, a great guy, And one of the,
He does
as far
a
as I'm
great job.
concerned, you know, he does. He really does. That was one of the most powerful interviews, I think. That I mean, people, spread that far and wide. Tell people about that.
I did.
interview.
I got my aunt listening to at least Rick Wiles, and she's kind of changing and trying to get other people in her area to listen, but in her church. But people just don't want to know. I mean, it's not just secular people. I mean, they'll actually listen more about different things, you know, like the kids or whatever, the government stuff. But when you're trying to really educate about the big picture, nobody wants to know. I can't think about that. I got to think about this. I can't think about that. Like, well, if you don't think about that, you might not be able to think about whatever it is you're thinking about.
Exactly.
It's frustrating.
Exactly. No,
it
is. Well, Donna, thank you. Well,
okay, bye.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. And folks, you know, it's I've got respect for people like Robert Spencer, who are and Dr. Daniel Pipes and others who are saying, look at the threat from the Islamic community, and I agree with them. However, they stop at that. Right. They stop right there.
I mean, look at this headline. We don't have to get into the story. We'll go back to calls. But the threats from within. EPA claims it has power to garnish wages without court approval.
Of course.
It's a Fox News story from yesterday. So check that out if you guys get a chance. We're going to go back to the phones. We're going to go to an international caller. I think this country code 15 or 150. Not sure how that works. International caller. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Hello?
Hello?
Okay. Yeah, that's you. You're up.
That's me? Okay. Hey, this is Bob in Guatemala. How are you guys tonight?
Very well.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Bob, great to hear from you. My dad was muted.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. That was me.
That sounded weird. Listen, when you guys do those pauses, it's really scary because we know some of the things can happen. It's like, uh-oh. you kind of catch your breath on those long pauses there, Doug. So, you know, hey, think about that. And thanks for no more commercials on the treats there, buddy. I mean, they sounded really great. But, you drove me crazy. But hey, listen, the other night when Dave Hodges was on your show, he talked about the train that the kids are riding up there on.
Yes.
They call it the Beast. And he said that it originated in Nicaragua. Well, I have to disagree with that as I live here in Guatemala, and there are no viable train tracks that run through Guatemala from any country. They have the old narrow gauge rails, and you might even see them in some of the places around the country. The only locomotives I have seen in the country are under a shed in somebody's park in somebody's little town, and it used to work someplace, but basically they were used to haul bananas or coffee or, you know, different kind of things to the ports. But there is no train track that runs through Guatemala from any place. It doesn't happen.
Okay.
So,
well, we'll pass that along to Mr. Hodges. And Bob, I have a question for you. How long ago was it that all the children in your village started disappearing?
Well, you know, I don't live in the village, so it's not like, and I help the people here where I do live, and I don't know anybody that I know of who has actually left. Now, that was one of my points, is the fact that I've lived here for a long time, and I worked at an orphanage for a long time, and the only thing those children could think about was going to the U.S. So this is not and then, you know, so many people, they watch the TVs, they watch the sports, they watch all this other kind of stuff, and of course they get involved in soccer. That's pretty much worldwide, even more than the States is. But still, States is still the pie in the sky, so to speak. You know what I'm talking about? It's like that's the place where it all happens, you know. They see people who come here from the States to help them, and it's just like, why not go there? And I keep encouraging them. You don't really understand what is going on there. So you know, it's like,
if you don't mind me,
sure.
If you don't mind me asking, where are you located in Guatemala?
I'd rather not say that, but I'm in.
Okay.
I'm
fine.
outside. I'm outside of the city.
Okay.
All right. Well, can you shed some light on exactly what's happening then? Why the sudden influx, at least from your perspective, being in Guatemala, why the sudden influx, or what is perceived to be the sudden influx of the mass exodus from Central America into the United States?
Well, there again, it's just the fact that well, I had talked to some people just the other day, and they told me that there are 1 million Guatemalans that live in the U.S. that are legal. Okay? So there have been a lot of people who have immigrated from Guatemala to the United States. And as I've been out in the countryside working with what I do in missionary work, you go into a village that's basically a bunch of shacks. Less than a shack, what we would call a shack in the U.S. And when you go there, it's like all of a sudden here's a beautiful concrete block house, nice roof, a TV antenna, and a generator, because most of the time these villages don't even have power, And so it's like, who lives there? Well, their family lives in the U.S. and sends them money every month. And they've come and built a nice house for their mom. And they've done this other kind of stuff. And because I understand that there is $1 billion per year that comes back to Guatemala from the U.S. from family members there. That's pretty impressive, that they care about their folks, and they do want to take care of people here. So that's very encouraging to me that they
Absolutely.
do that.
But the question though remains: what changed over the last, I don't know,
6 months,
6
a year.
months, yeah, to cause this massive change?
I don't watch TV. I listen to you guys. Watched alternative media and have for years, and get most of my information off the internet. So I don't watch the local TV. I don't get the news. I don't get the newspaper. I'm semi-isolated, so unless somebody tells me what's going on, but I can't really answer your question as to what changed where everybody wants to go there at one time. But mine,
okay.
When you said about the gentleman who came here with the armed forces a minute ago, it was like, I'd like to know where he went. It's just like, because, it happens all the time, So it's just, we have no idea about. So,
okay.
One other thing that I'd like to mention is, the kids who are coming in, they're saying they have all these different kinds of diseases and stuff like that are so contagious. And I'd be happy to get in touch with you later off the air, but off the not live, but because there are so many things. I work with different naturopaths here and different herbalists, and we cure just about everything. You just can't imagine, and it's really, really simple. And it's so simple that most people don't believe that it will happen, and therefore they won't try it. I tried to contact a friend of mine in the States. I'm from Mississippi, and he had contacted this stuff called the bacterial that eats you. Okay, that eats the flesh-eating bacteria is what I'm trying to say. And so the stuff that I know about will stop that. Well, the last I heard, they cut off his arm to the elbow, cut off his arm to the shoulder, and I don't know if he's still alive or not, but I knew the gentleman from a long time ago, from high school days. But anyway, nobody wants to talk about it. It's like, I'm just trying to help people for $26. Wouldn't it be easier to do that than have 2 surgeries and, no telling what that hospital bill was, even if they had insurance, So
the miracles of modern medicine, huh? Yeah.
Well, send us an email, Paul, of how we can. I do have your number here. Whatever showed up, whatever you called from, the number that you called from. But I'll wait to hear from you via email, and we'll send you our numbers, and we'll get in touch off air and discuss what it is that you want to discuss off air.
Sounds great. I appreciate it, Joe and Doug. We really appreciate everything y'all do. I mean, my only problem is my internet connection is so feeble, so to speak. It's like I'm listening to you on Skype most of the time because my internet connection isn't strong enough to pick you up off the internet. And it goes and makes all the funny noises, and it's a real hoot sometimes the way y'all talk. But it's not just my connection. But God bless you guys, and may He keep you safe and protect you. The other night when y'all didn't get on, it was like, oh my gosh, and I finally saw the other chat on the other station that y'all use, the video thing, the Christian broadcast. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay. I finally saw on that you guys had sent a chat that y'all were okay with, but just knocked off the air. It's like, well, at least they're okay. I'm thinking, God, did they swat them, and are they alive and well, or whatever, you know? So
now you'd hear me yelling and screaming.
Even down here, okay. Sounds good. Well,
yeah.
God bless you guys. We thank you so very much for everything you do for us.
Thanks, Bob.
God bless you too, Bob. Take care.
Stay safe out there.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Truly an international broadcast, and we want to thank our international listeners from the Philippines, from Taiwan, from mainland China, from Italy, and elsewhere. God bless you all. One thing, folks, in case you missed it, Tosh Plumlee, the CIA contractor pilot for the CIA, was interviewed by John B. Wells, Caravan to Midnight, and the first half of the interview is available without necessarily subscribing to Caravan to Midnight. If you can find it on their YouTube channel. But it's important to note, and thanks, Gene, for sending this information. Tosh has a lot to say about what's going on at the southern border. Of course, it's a result of what's happened back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on. It's the culmination of a larger plan, and that's to destabilize the region and to create the necessity of having this influx of people coming up from the Central American area. But one thing that's very important that Tosh did say is that really this is somewhat of a diversion from the larger story. The larger story being is that the Middle Eastern Muslim terrorists, including but not limited to members of ISIS, are in fact paying coyotes or being hooked up. I mean, they're very well funded, so they have no problem grabbing somebody to shuttle them up through our southern border into the United States, where they're fanning out, bringing with them some pretty significant weaponry. And this weaponry does include the missiles.
Leftovers from Fast and Furious?
Well, actually, you know, it's interesting you asked that question because there are many warehouses, on both sides of the border, that have been stocked with weapons, and we've reported on a number of stories where there have been caches of weapons found. Only a very small percentage, but you're talking about military-grade hardware, weaponry that's intended for use here in the cities. Now we've domestically, this is a planned operation. This cannot exist without the assistance, much like the situation in Syria with Assad in the civil war that was fueled and funded by Western intelligence interests. This could not exist on its own necessarily. This requires it doesn't necessarily require, but it has Western funding and funding in direction by the globalist powers to bring in this weaponry into the United States. Imagine a Stinger missile taking out an aircraft here in this country, or multiple Stinger missiles taking out aircraft, or, as you had reported earlier, Joe mentioned earlier, the dirty bombs. And as we heard from Sergeant Page, Rick Well's interview, about the pre-positioning of the former, recall the former suitcase nukes from the... So all of this is working. This is a this goes well beyond political party. This is the globalist agenda, and of course,
yes,
this is the way to create this northern or this North American Union, as well as it is to destroy certain elements of our country.
And I just want to say, give a special shout out to our listener. I'll say Dee, listening from Zimbabwe, Africa, 4:36 in the morning there. Fascinating. Going to the phones, we're going to go to area code 702. 702, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 702? We can hear you. All right, we're going to put you back on hold. We have another international caller, country code 97 or 972. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Yes, so 972 is my country code. Yes. This is Hannah calling from Jerusalem. I wanted to tell you that I looked at Steve Quayle's website yesterday, and he said that Tosh Plumlee was going to be interviewed on Rick Wilde's show, and I downloaded it. And he said exactly what Doug just mentioned, that these children are just a ploy, it's a diversion. The real reason for this sudden invasion was to get these, unfortunately, what they call OTMs, or other than Mexicans, across the border, to go to various cities carrying, God forbid, weapons of, as you said, deplete uranium or God knows what, in case nukes or whatever. But, Mr. Plumlee did definitely say that this is all a diversion. They all say, the TV is, talking heads are talking about this is such a humanitarian disaster. We have to help these children. But they're missing the point. The reason why that they're not letting reporters come down and film what's going on at the border is, and they're being threatened with them being thrown in jail if they dare go to the border, is that probably more than 50% of these people getting through the border are Muslims coming through the corridors through South America, and that was totally alarming to me. So I just wanted to, it's funny that you just took the words out of my mouth, because that's what I was thinking about. On top of that, I was concerned that W is not calling in anymore, and I hope that he's all right, and I'm looking forward to him being able to speak to you again, because his information is just so important, so vital. And I just wanted to, convey that to you.
Yes, he's fine. He's been extremely busy, involved in some things here over the last several days. I just talked to him probably 10 minutes before airtime.
Yeah, I heard his voice today. I can verify he's okay.
Yeah, he is okay. So that's believe me, he will. The message that he has will be heard, I guarantee you.
And caller, if we can ask, we were talking in the second hour about what's happening in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, how Hamas is using, launching attacks from civilian homes and then making the civilians victims of the retaliatory airstrikes. What is the danger level increasing over there? What's happening in Jerusalem and Israel right now?
They're shooting missiles so deep into the territories, all the cities, major cities of highly dense population areas in Israel. My daughter lives in Tel Aviv, and I'm in Jerusalem. And I had to go into a shelter today. I heard 5 loud booms. It sounded like it was literally right above my building. It was very frightening. They were intercepted, thank God, by the Iron Dome. My daughter has been under a barrage of missiles yesterday. They've been hitting Tel Aviv like crazy. But thank God, because the Iron Dome is situated in only in the cities, they're obviously not going to put them all over Israel, but they're empty fields, and there's no need to use them. But so far they've been intercepting, and thank God that no one has been injured. It's been miraculous, actually. So it's been working so far, and Israel is they're under a campaign now where they're going to invade Gaza very soon, any day now, maybe tomorrow, because we can't handle this anymore. I mean, it's like, would L.A. tolerate being bombarded with 200 missiles in one day? Killing major population centers, or would any city north of the Mexican border, would the United States tolerate being attacked with hundreds and hundreds of missiles? I mean, it's been over 500 in the past couple of days, and it's very frightening. You're at work, and all of a sudden sirens go off, and you have 30 seconds to get into a shelter, and it's a very frightening situation. But
well, thank the Lord you're safe.
Pardon me?
I said thank the Lord that you're safe and your family's safe, and that you guys do have the warning system set up, and that you have the capacity to shield yourselves from those incoming attacks.
Well,
we
if I
have
can
no choice.
Well,
yes.
Unfortunately, yes. If I may ask, what is the sentiment, the public sentiment, about the government of America's position with respect to the current level of fighting, and of course our apparent, ostensible lack of backing up Israel?
Our leader, Bibi Netanyahu, he's a very smart man, and he's always known right from the get-go that Obama was anti-Israel. He's not stupid, and he's very diplomatic, but it's well known among his own circles that he detests him and sees him as an enemy, and knows that he's involved with the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's public knowledge here. It's sad. It's the first time Israel has not had the backing of the United States ever since it's been created, as the state since 1948, and we see him as a threat. We see him as a threat towards the entire world, not just towards Israel, and towards the United States as well. And we feel for the righteous Gentiles in the United States. We pray for them, and we sincerely hope that the brave patriots will be able to stave off any type of God forbid attack, within the homeland. But I feel very torn because I still have relatives in America, and I keep telling them, if you're not prepared, if you live in a large city, you're a fool. You have to make preparations, and they think that I'm nuts. They don't believe me. And I said, can't you see what's going on? I mean, do you have access to any of these alternative media websites or internet radio shows? And I mentioned you, and I mentioned Steve Quayle and Sheila Zielinski and a whole array. I even Drudge is picking up major stories by Alex+Jones, and Alex+Jones has turned out to be a true blue, 100% real deal guy. Everybody thought he was a crackpot. But everything he's saying has been prophetic and coming true, and yep. People just don't want to believe it. They don't want to hear it. And I was speaking to my husband tonight, and I said, "Get out! I don't care where you go." I have a daughter. He still lives with my daughter in New York. I said, "Get out of New York. Go to a small town. Go to Costa Rica. Go to South America. Go anywhere. Just get out." I said, "You're not safe. You don't." Before I left a year ago, I bought maybe, I don't know, about 50 gallons of bottled water. They thought I was crazy, I bought, storage of, dried, freeze-dried food, and they thought I was crazy. And I told him, he has to be prepared, blah, 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 blah. And, he goes, "I don't want to hear about this. You're scaring me. I don't want to hear about it." And I'm one of those women that you talk about who've been battling their husbands, trying to get them on board. And I think now he's finally starting to see the light, But
well, God bless you, my dear. Can I, if you don't mind me asking, can I ask your first name?
Yeah. Well, I might as well give you my first name because I've published so much information over the past 5 years against the renegade in charge that I knew even before he was elected as a candidate that this man was a Muslim and he was no good and he was going to destroy America. I knew right from the get-go. So they must have a file on me about 20 miles long at the NSA. My name's Anita.
Okay, Anita.
My first
name is
Anita. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's all. I'm sure there are many Anitas. The reason I ask that is because I would love, both Joe and I would love for you to call in we're concerned, number one, for your safety and security, it being in Jerusalem and being over there, and we would love for you to call in with updates at your leisure. Because you're on the ground there. You see what's going on. You're aware. You're awake, and such intelligence, such information is so valuable to us over here. We're not getting anything close to what's really going on. And if we can impose upon you at your when you can, we realize there's a significant time difference. But
I'm telling you, I set my clock. I'm up at 3:00 in the morning to get you guys. That's how dedicated I am. And,
wow.
I listen to Sheila Zielinski. I listen to Alex+Jones. I listen to whomever is on, Rick Wild. I mean, the whole slew of all the alternative media I listen to. I listen to Republican Broadcast Network. I listen to even Pete Santilli, even though sometimes he's a little off color with his language. I listen to everybody. I listen to John Moore. You name it. I listen to them all those shows that speak the truth and know about what's going on. I used to watch Jesse Ventura before they pulled him off the air when I was still in the States on was it True News? What was it called? I forget his TV station, but they had to pull him off because he was getting too controversial. I'll never forget when he showed that FEMA camp with his camera crew, and he was asked. It was empty at the time, but there was a playground set, and he said, "Who are those for?" He said, "Oh, those are for families." He said, "Well, where are they?" "Well, we can't tell you that now, sir. How come the barbed wires instead of turning outward to protect people, how come they're turned inwards? In other words, not letting people out?" And she said, "Well, we can't answer that right now, sir. You'll have to talk to so and so." Well, they were so evasive. And then there were people that came up in a black SUV and said, "You have to leave now. You have to get off." I understand that Jesse Ventura is now out of the country. He doesn't feel safe. A lot of people feel very threatened. I mean, even Alex+Jones mentioned the fact that he feels so torn. He loves his family, and he doesn't want to put them in jeopardy. However, his family goes all the way back to the Mayflower. He's a true patriot. He has relatives that fought at the Alamo, and he's going to stay and fight. And so I follow all of these, righteous Gentiles, and I pray for them all the time. And I feel very, I still feel very close to America, and I'm sad that I had to leave, but I had no other choice. I remember I listened to V a year ago, and he said, if you have a chance of a passport to go to another country, get out now while you can. If you have a chance to support yourself somewhere else, get out now. I'll never forget that. I spoke to V on the phone, and and I told her that those were my plans, and so he even he even gave me some information about how to ship certain things, if you know what I'm talking about, out of the country, and he's been very helpful. And I always, whenever he's on with you guys, I always tune in, VW, whatever, and I listen to you guys a lot. So
well, we
right
really appreciate it.
Yeah, don't worry about Israel. We intend to survive. There's going to be a ground war in Gaza, and please God, we'll take it back. We know it belongs in our country. We never should have given up in the first place. It was the biggest mistake. So we know
Indeed.
who Obama is. We know who he is. We know what his intentions are, and I even knew. I mean, I remember when Glenn Beck was on the air when he used to be normal 6 years ago. He was on Fox, and they let him have a venue at 5:00 every day for an hour, and he would talk about the whole plan, the whole agenda. And I remember one day he broke into tears. Everybody said, "This guy's a clown. He's crazy." He was crying because he knew what the plan was. He knew he had an insider who was warning him. Somebody within, I guess, one of the elitists told him. He broke down basically what was going to happen to America and what they had planned for all of us, and depopulation and FEMA camps and the whole 9 yards. And he's the one who blew the whistle on various communists in the White House, like Van Jones. He was the one responsible for Van Jones having to leave office because everybody he let it out that the guy was a communist, you know. And then he had there were so many things that he said that illuminated me to the truth. I mean, he was talking about that Obama was going to sponsor a caliphate. There was going to be an invasion of Libya, and there was going to be a change of regime in Egypt. He said this about 2 years before it happened. And when I started to see that everything he said came true, I said, my God, this was like 5.5 years ago when he was on Fox, and he used to talk against Soros until finally they threw him off the air. He couldn't go on the air anymore because Roger Ailes was getting in trouble. He was the manager of the station. But and then of course now poor Glenn Beck, he's had to sort of like shut himself up and pretend that he's going along with the program, trying to defile or trying to criticize Alex+Jones, and all of a sudden he's changing his tune and saying, oh boy, they got to him, they threatened his family, whatever, and now he can't be truthful anymore, and he's trying to protect himself. But it's sad to see that. But he's one of the first ones who actually woke me up. And I don't listen to him anymore because he's changed his tone. He's all of a sudden he's part of the mainstream almost. But I don't want to be too long-winded. I know you have other people that you want to speak to. So, but I will call
please.
Again. I'll let you know what's going on.
Okay. Please do so, and our prayers are with you, and of course your husband here, and your family in the States. And I ask all of our audience, all of our listeners, to keep you in prayer for your safety and well-being as things get increasingly dire and hot over there in Jerusalem and Israel proper. So.
Well, you're not. My last parting statement to you is you're not going to believe this, but as I was hearing the booms going off and the floors shaking in the shelter, I still said, I feel safer here than in the United States. But for some odd reason, because we have an army that is protecting us. Where's the army in the United States? They're not there. They're all over the world. They're being sent back to Iraq, and all you have is Department of Homeland Security who actually are working for Obama. They're his brown shirt, you know what I'm saying? So here we have an army who actually really wants to protect its citizens. So even ironically, with all the sirens going off and the missiles going off, I still feel safer here, oddly enough. I just hope that a lot of more Americans are going to wake up, and I'm getting encouraged to hear that more and more policemen are resigning because they don't want to take this oath to be sworn into Obama's new edict to shoot at Americans, and more military are resigning, and more former DHS people are resigning, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a good message, and I hope that happens every day, that thousands more are going to resign and combat what Obama plans to do. And I'm not just saying Obama. I mean, Bush is just as guilty. Bush and even Clinton, they were all in on it. So, but anyway, thank you so much, and I'll keep listening to you guys. I think you're marvelous. You're just very, very righteous men, and you're just very blessed. And I appreciate your messages, and just keep going on with what you're doing. I appreciate it so much.
God bless you, and thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Wow. Have a good morning.
Shalom from Israel. Thank you.
Shalom.
Bye-bye.
Shalom.
Bye-bye.
Wow. Well, this was a night, Joe, of international callers.
Yes, it was. And sadly, our time is up here. Tomorrow night, we have no guests scheduled as of yet, and I don't know or think that we will. as we decided really to just get into the news, get into the calls. We have a good lineup going for next week that is not even public to my father's knowledge.
Or public. I've got something for you as well that I.
Oh yeah, you did tell me. There's something you got planned next week, but
it's a cloak and dagger situation here in the Hagmann studio.
Yeah, and we'll be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. I will not be here on Saturday evening, and I don't know what you and Sheila have planned.
I'll be manning the studio microphone with Sheila Zielinski, the Weekend Warrior, on Saturday, or Weekend Vigilante on Saturday.
So the next 2 days, 8 to 11 p.m. Tomorrow, me and my dad. Saturday, my dad and Sheila, and whatever. I know that she was working on some guests.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I agree. With that, God bless. Stay safe. To all of you, no matter where you are in the world, we love you and thank you so much for being a part of our listening audience. We feel very blessed and are very happy that we have you guys out there. So with that, we're going to sign off and stay safe until tomorrow.
Good night.